Hi handsome and welcome to my 45th video. I never had the opportunity to do this before, so indulge me for a second. I never wanted to do this video. It's time to stand my ground. In case you don't know, recently I made a video talking about open world PvP. This video is my longest scripted video to date. I've been working on it since early December and needless to say put a lot of research to it. It was meant to be a discussion about the different failures of the game's open world PvP and just an overall exploration as to why open world PvP is not as common as it used to be. I tried to be as non-partial as I could have been because I also enjoy a bit of PvP, open world or not, in my BDO. That being said, I have noticed over the years a growing divide between players on either side. Now the divide is not hard set, but usually you have veteran players and PvPers on one side who want open world PvP to not only be allowed, but also incentivized, and on the most extreme side even forced on everyone. And on the other side, you have the PvE NDs, who are usually newer players who have no interest in PvP at all, or simply enjoy PvP in an instanced context such as arenas or battlegrounds. And these players then want open world PvP to be at the very least heavily disincentivized or restricted, and in the most extreme cases, completely removed from the game. As I have said in the first video, I don't fit into either one of these categories, and I'm definitely not alone in this. I am of the belief that open world PvP should simply be opt-in, or serve as a last resort, but otherwise exist in the game. The video was then meant to serve as a talking point so that the PvE and PvP NDs could come together and find a compromise, or at least talk it out. The other purpose of the video was to look at PvP in the ideal form. By this, I mean that I did not look at open world PvP as it is in the game now, but as people want it to be. This is why I didn't talk about contemporary problems, but about core flaws with the concept itself, and I even state this in the pinned comment of the original video. So why am I talking about all of this? Well, as some of you may know, BlueSquadron reacted to that original video, and I will just rip the band-aid off here. His reaction was extremely disappointing, but not for the reasons you may think. I never expected him to agree with me. I know what his feelings towards the game are, and that would be expecting way too much. What I did expect though was at least a fair and balanced response. Needless to say, I did not get that. What I did get instead of that was a flurry of personal attacks, misinformation, misinterpreting to the point where he interpreted my points as the actual opposite of what I was saying, skipping parts of the video, and overall disrespect, vitriol, and hatred similar to what I have encountered during my research and also encountered from his viewers after his video got released to YouTube. As such, I have decided for the first and last time to do a follow-up video. This will be my one and only response to this topic, whether Blue decides to watch and or react to this video or not. The reason I am making this now and not sooner is because I've been sick and also needed some time to collect my thoughts about what was said. If you are a regular subscriber and you're not interested in this, I apologize for bringing drama to your timeline, and I will see you in my next video. If you are a subscriber of Blues, then I hope I can at least change your mind a little bit. Before we begin, I want to thank Blue for the reaction. He did not know what the nature of the video was going to be, so regardless of what he thinks of it, to give it a chance still helps the channel. Even if the majority of the traffic coming over from his video is overwhelmingly negative, it is still traffic, and judging from the comments that I have seen on his video, not everyone agrees with him either, and my channel has received some growth as a result. At the end of the day, the original video was meant to spark a discussion, and for better or worse, that is what it has managed to do, in no small part thanks to him. With that out of the way, a little bit about me, since I feel I need to defend my person following all the personal attacks about me. If you don't care about my backstory, you can completely skip this part, but to the rest of you, here we go. I've been playing MMOs since I was 10 years old. My first ever MMO you have probably never even heard of. It's a small MMO called 4Story. This was a mix between a Korean grindfest like BDO and a WoW clone. I played this MMO for 3 reasons. It was free to play, my best friend at the time played as well, but most importantly, it was translated to Czech, my native language. What is most important about this game is that it had open world PvP as well as a PvP game mode called Dobývání in Czech, which loosely translates to conquest. And this was something between today's Node War and Siege in BDO. This meant that in specific zones there would be different forts as permanent parts of a given zone, which would become active during the conquest time. Since the game was a WoW clone, the player base was split into two factions. These forts could belong to either faction, and every day, with the exception of Sunday, the factions would fight over these forts, with different guilds on each faction defending and attacking. If the attackers broke through the walls and killed the enemy NPC general, they would be on the defense the next day, and if the defenders managed to defend, they would keep the fort for the time being. The reason I'm explaining all this is because I love this shit. I would attend these conquests like it was mass at church. I did this for about 4 years before I got introduced to World of Warcraft in high school. Once again, I played on a Czech private server with faster progression that all my high school classmates played on, that was stuck in Wrath of the Lich King. And all we did in this private server was battlegrounds, with an occasional raid of ICC for the titles and items. This lasted for about 2 years before another private server in World of Warcraft materialized. You might have heard of this one. It was Nostalrius. I was even an officer during this time, and while my priorities shifted a bit to raiding because I thought 40 men in Ragnaros and Onyxia was super cool, I still enjoyed the occasional battleground, especially after they released Alterac Valley and you had to grind a reputation for that goddamn home. After Nostalrius got nuked by Blizzard, I looked to greener pastures and played FF14. I've been playing that game on and off from late Heaven's Ward all the way until the middle of Endwalker, where the last thing I did was become one of the first 100 people in the entire world to clear Eureka Orphos, which is your deep dungeon, and then had to stop playing because of Unique Finals, and I did not like Down Trail, so I stopped playing after that entirely. During all of this time, I tried many other MMOs, since it is one of my favorite genres. I played almost every MMO that you can think of. Both versions of RuneScape, Guild Wars 2, Blade and Soul, Neverwinter, Elder Scrolls Online, Albion Online, Lord of the Rings Online, later on Lost Ark, even New World, and even some games that you might have not heard about before, like Toram Online, Metin 2, Nostale, or Wizard 101. I was not one of the people who would only play one game or even just one MMO religiously, and I needed variety. Obviously, BDO is the MMO that I'm playing now, which I bought and first tried all the way back in 2017, but my computer at the time could not run it above 10 FPS, so I had to wait until 2019 when I did finally get an upgrade, but then I got back into FF14 and because of that lost my account during the Perl-based self-publishing, and I had to start again from scratch with the Corsair release in 2021, and I've been playing basically all the time since then. That being said, one of the main reasons I stopped doing as much PvP in my MMOs was because of the small indie game that came out in 2009, League of Legends. Now, I played the original Defense of the Ancients mod for Warcraft 3, mainly because Warcraft 3 was translated to Czech, but the mod wasn't, it was still in English, and I had no clue what I was doing back then. I was just as clueless in League of Legends when it first came out, but over time I understood it more and more, and as well my English level also increased, and I played League of Legends for a total of 14 years, finally quitting last year, a month or so after Aurora released. I also played plenty of other PvP games, chief amongst them shooters. I have over 400 hours on PUBG, over 600 hours on R6 Siege, over 700 hours on CSGO, and almost 900 hours on Hunt Showdown on Steam alone. I say all of this because it pisses me off to no end when someone who doesn't know shit about me says that I don't do PvP, don't play MMOs, or don't know anything about either. It's even more infuriating when they say such a thing while watching an hour-long video in which the majority of the background footage is me doing PvP in BDO. The only reason a person would ever say this about me is in a way to discredit me and what I have to say, and serves no purpose other than to make me look inept. It is a dishonest tactic, and it is frankly disgusting. What makes this even worse is that we are talking about open world PvP in BDO, a sandbox MMORPG. If you watch my content, especially if you ever watched my stream, you would know that I do almost everything the game has to offer. I life skill a lot, yes, because that's what I enjoy the most in the game, and also because that is what my content kind of necessitates and at the same time makes me unique through the Iron Pan challenge. But that doesn't mean that I don't do anything else, and anyone who watches me can attest that I do almost everything the game has to offer. But let's ignore the ad hominems for a second. Let's discuss the idea of, he's a life skiller, he can't talk about PvP. Okay then, if you consider yourself a PvPer, you can only talk about PvP. No more making life skill guides or suggestions on how to fix life skill or literally anything else that is not directly tied to PvP. You can only talk about the thing that your label given to you by someone else allows you to do. That's not all either, because the entire idea of you shouldn't talk about open world PvP if you don't do it is in itself ridiculous in a BDO context. Because guess what? If I get killed in the open world, I am doing open world PvP. Open world PvP directly affects everyone in the open world. I can't believe I have to say this, okay? And everyone who is affected by it should therefore be able to talk about it, not just the people who are doing the killing or these self-proclaimed PvPers. This logic doesn't work or even exist anywhere in the real world. Imagine asking whether crime should be allowed and people going, well, if you're not a criminal, you shouldn't speak on crimes. Or asking how much workers should be paid only for someone to go, well, you're not the CEO of a company, so you don't actually know how it works. There is a very good reason why we don't do this. It leads to one-sided solutions that only benefit one party and leave the other in the dust. Finally, am I a Pearl Abyss decrider, shill, virtue signaler, or whatever other derogatory word you want to use against me?
You got me.
Seriously, grow up. Calling me these names simply because I disagree with you is extremely childish and says more about you than it does about me. By the way, not only do I have absolutely nothing to gain from shilling Pearl Abyss, since I don't make money from these videos, nor am I even a Pearl Abyss creator, I've also criticized Pearl Abyss myself many times before, both on stream and in videos. Most recently when they introduced the 3000 mastery into the game. Funnily enough, this was a change I saw PvPers propose. So, before you call me these names in the future, perhaps you should first consider that it's not that deep and I simply like the things that you don't. Alright, with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the actual points Blue has made in the video. And we will start with the big one. BDO is not a PvP game. I have a couple things to say here. First, the idea that I just googled what a PvP game is. This is reducing what I have done quite a lot. I have not just googled PvP games, and you can see the entire process in the video. What I have done is I looked at a vast array of games that appeared under the PvP list search on Google, yes, but then I removed the games that also showed under the PvE list to remove false positives. And then I formed a set of rules that the true PvP games, as I call them, have in common, which I can then use for other games and decide if they are or aren't PvP games, because once again, there really is no such a thing as a PvP game, okay? Is this the best method? No. And I do admit this in the video. What it is, however, is a method. A method that can be replicated and tested on other things. Now, do you know what is not a method? Is, or at least was, a PvP game. Or even better.
It is.
Let's get one thing clear, okay? BlueSquadron's definition of PvP game is completely made up, just like mine is. So let's put his entirely made up definition to the test. Here it is.
All of the end game is PvP content. All of it. That's the motivation for all end game stuff is all PvP.
Okay, so a game is a PvP game if its end game is PvP. Well, this isn't helpful at all, because in order to know what a PvP game is, under this definition, we first need to know what end game is. And since this is another nebulous term that especially in BDO doesn't have a hard cutoff line, we need to actually find a definition for it. Thankfully, Blue tells us what it is and gives us a few examples of endgame in both BDO and other video games. So let's hear it.
Oh my God, bro. World of Warcraft has PvP modes. Do you guys consider World of Warcraft a PvP game? No, it's not a PvP game. That's the most PvE game there is, but there's PvP in the game. Fantastic sandbox, but at the end of the day, all of this gear that you're grinding for is meant to be used for PvP, and that's just the truth. There is no end game PvE in BDO that you can do consistently. The only thing you can say is like, oh, the guild boss splits. Well, you can only do that once a week, so that's not really a fair excuse, right? It's not really a fair thing to say, right? The reason why they don't want to give rewards in PvP is because PvP is the end game. Guys, newsflash, the developers don't want to hand away rewards for PvP because they believe that the end game players play the game doing PvP, right? And if they're not getting any rewards for that, it's allowing the new and mid game players to catch up to them while they have fun doing PvP, right? And the new and mid game players have fun doing all this other content to grind up to the end game, where now they're not getting any rewards anymore because they're doing the super fun end game content, which is PvP. That's how it's worked for years. That's why they've been resistant to giving rewards away for PvP in general. Okay, so it's a sandbox MMO whose end game, you can say it's not a PvP game anymore, and that the PvP systems are garbage. The PvP systems are garbage, right? But you also have to look at it and say, what is the end game of Black Desert Online? Once you have all the gear in the world, what are you going to go do? Your full deck, everything. What is there to do? PvP. Fishing, no, that's just PvP. That's it. PvP is the end game of BDO. My chat is trolling, but like that's just the truth. Whether it be uncapped Node Wars, uncapped Siege, open world PvP, or AOS, or whatever, you're gonna spend your time PvPing when you get all that gear. It's just the truth.
Alright, so you might already be having some questions about the clips and what he said in them, and that they are kind of contradictory. But that's fine, let's ignore them for now, let's only take them as they are and apply them to an example. And remember, if your endgame is PvP, that means your game as a whole is PvP as well, okay? According to BlueSquadron and his made-up rules. So, here we go. World of Warcraft, which Blue explicitly said is one of the most PvE games there is, according to his own definition, is a PvP game. Don't believe me? Let's put them to the test. The open world PvP in WoW has no rewards, unlike the PvE. It can be done consistently, unlike the PvE. It's what you do when you are hard cap, which means that after you've done all the PvE content on offer, right? So you have your raids done, everything done, your best in slot done, so you do PvP, right? Same as once you have full deck Karazad, full deck Sovereign, you go PvP. So the same logic applies here as well. And finally, it serves as the catch-up mechanic, because all the people raiding will have time to get their gear, while the hardcap endgame guys allegedly fight each other. So already, this made-up definition is a complete failure, and doesn't make any sense. Okay, but let's be charitable and say that these rules are not made to be combined, and that World of Warcraft being a PvP game, okay, so what it is, that still can mean that BDO is a PvP game as well, right? You can have two PvP games. So let's separate these rules and try to apply them to BDO one by one, so we see if at least there is some sort of a logic to the PvP gameness of BDO. Okay, so PvP has no rewards. False. All of PvP in BDO has rewards. AOS, Guild League, RBF, War of the Roses, Node Wars, Siege all give you a reward. Siege also gives you the castle buff, which is a reward, and open world PvP, Blue says it himself, once again, you are fighting for resources. So guess what? Those resources, that's the reward. So okay, so already one down. Next up, PvP is what you do when you are hard cap. False. AOS can be done from level 60, open world PvP unlocks at level 50. Node Wars and Siege have capped versions that you can do after Tuvala, and even open world PvP has a seasonal Archer server. You don't actually need to be hard capped to do open world PvP. 2 down. And we have one more rule, PvP is only done between people at endgame who fight each other. This is once again false, maybe in theory this could be somehow, sometimes for somebody, maybe true, but let's be real, endgame players do and will go to mid-game or even early game spots and kill whoever is there. Still have 2 more to go, guys. PvP can be done consistently. This is true for AOS, okay. RBF, if you can find a match, and open world PvP. It's not true for War of the Roses, Node Wars, Siege, and if you want to be super pedantic, it's not true for Guild League either. So let's give this one a little bit of a slide and say that it's half correct. The funny part here is that he uses Boss Blitz as a counterexample of endgame PvE, yet Boss Blitz doesn't need hardcap gear and gives you rewards, so even though he says that it is endgame, according to his own definition, once again it can't be. I also love how he conveniently forgets that endgame grind spots exist. Boss Blitz requires less gear score from you, he includes that, but for some reason he doesn't include Dekiatu Owlens or anything along those lines. Finally, we have the last rule: PvP is a catch-up mechanic. And this is once again false. Not only does this assume that people that reach hardcap gear stop grinding entirely and make no money whatsoever, it's also false because of the totem pole effect that Blue likes so much, since these hardcap people will sit on the best money per hour spots, effectively making it harder for the people below them to catch up. This point, unironically, is more true for games like World of Warcraft, because not only can these players actually help the newbies catch up in those games by carrying them through raids, they also don't get anything from getting the same gear again. Alright, so out of all the criteria that Blue has made up, BDO only loosely fits one. I think that we can now clearly say that BDO is not a PvP game, not even according to BlueSquadron himself. Onto the first of many Blue's misinterpretations of what I said. Let's go to the part of the video where I discuss whether the game has been advertised as a PvP game or not. Here, I am talking about the idea that is spread by some people in the community, which is that BDO was sold to people as a PvP game, and therefore it's some sort of false advertising or a rug pull now that it's not anymore. So when I say in the video that I have no idea where people got this from, I am talking specifically about the advertising of BDO. This is why I then proceed to show a plethora of different marketing and advertisement materials, because I am no longer disputing whether or not BDO is a PvP game, and I even use a sequitur before moving to this point. I am specifically debunking the idea that it was sold to people under false pretenses. Blue then misinterprets me saying this as the following: PvP mode of your choice. Alright, so now that we know that BDO is not a PvP game, let's discuss the idea that it was sold to people as such, or that it was PvP game once before. Because I honestly have absolutely zero clue whatsoever where people got this idea from. For starters, let's look at the Steam store page for BDO. This is what it looks like. On the right,
you don't know where people got the idea that the end game is the PvP? So you're gonna look at the Steam store? Come on!
the funniest part about all of this is that I do know where people got the idea of BDO's endgame being PvP from, and I do explain it in the video as well, but for whatever reason, Blue decided to skip that part entirely. We also need to talk about the meaning of words. Blue, for some reason, thinks that the words combat and siege are PvP specific terms. What he doesn't understand, or perhaps doesn't even realize, is that these terms are unambiguous, and a person who doesn't have prior knowledge of them in the context of BDO won't know what gameplay it translates to. Don't believe me? Here is the Steam page for Dynasty Warriors 9. Oh, what's that? Fight exciting castle sieges? That means it's PvP, right, Blue? Wait, what do you mean the Dynasty Warriors 9 is a single player game? And just to be super pedantic, I guess that the Siege of Orgrimmar was actually a PvP event. As for the word combat, I don't even need to go to other games because BDO's own Steam page shows combat as a ninja fighting basilisks. Again, without prior knowledge of Siege in BDO or without scrolling down the Steam page where it is specified as PvP content and it is specified there for a reason, you will not get the idea of what Siege is from the description. Blue here once again completely misinterprets what I say because he thinks that the sentence "the game doesn't specify that Siege is PvP" means Siege isn't PvP, and says that I am deliberately misrepresenting Siege. Ironic. I also need to mention this. He says that PvPers are drawn to the game because of the combat, and he is correct to an extent. Here is the thing though. PvEers are also drawn to the game because of the combat. Do any of you guys actually think that people would put up with the hundreds of hours of grinding if the combat did not feel fun at the base level? Now, the counter argument to this is even better. Even in games whose combat we would consider bad, or at the very least simplistic, PvP is still enjoyed by many people. The perfect example is none other than old school RuneScape, but you can use any MMO with a PvP scene, including World of Warcraft, since Blue's argument here is that BDO attracts PvPers with its best in genre combat, and therefore every other combat in the genre must be worse and not attract PvPers. The other extremely funny part is that Blue actually agrees with me here in the idea that BDO was not advertised to people as a PvP game, except in the most convoluted way possible. Just listen to this. PvP game to me.
No, it screams MMO. Because if they literally said, hey guys, we have a game where it's only PvP focused, do you know how many people would play that? The same amount of people that play Concord. Okay? If it had said that, I wouldn't have gotten into BDO. If they were like, hey, this is a PvP focused MMO, I'd have been like, F that, I don't want to play that shit. Some sweat is going to turbo my ass. I never would have gotten into the game. Do you know why I got into the game in the first place? It's got a vast open world and it captivated my imagination. I thought it was the first game that I had ever played where I could put in hours and see meaningful progression on repeat the whole time. Keep in mind, I was grinding for 5 million silver an hour. Okay? Picked up the game in the first place. No, you have to appeal to the entire MMO audience, to players that don't have any idea that they want to try PvP until they've seen PvP for the first time and they think to themselves, wait, this actually is approachable. Wait, I could actually do this. It's not as hard as I think.
So we have a PvP game which needs to advertise to the PvEers so that they could later become PvPers, because that's who the combat appeals to, which is what the game advertises, and that's how you know it's a PvP game. And they say that I am incoherent. Also, I probably don't need to tell you that what he's saying is once again wrong. Here is Albion Online's Steam page, here is EVE Online's, and if these are not big enough of an MMORPG to you, here's Guild Wars 2. It's almost as if you can advertise your game as having PvP in it and it will still draw a lot of players. He also says this.
Right? You can't advertise it as strictly a PvP MMO. The people that like PvP in MMOs are very narrow. Super narrow subset of people. Far narrower than the amount of people that try BDO. But the amount of people that try PvP and BDO and enjoy it is much wider.
Much wider than what? Thanks to the structure of the sentence, the only thing that can logically fit here is that since the number of people who like PvP and MMOs is narrower than the number of people who try BDO, that means that the number of people who try PvP in BDO is much wider than the number of people who try BDO. After this is the point where he skips the rest of this section of the video. Honestly, if you are doing React content and you see yourself skipping a video like this, just turn it off entirely, okay? At this point, what's the point of me even making the video in the first place? If it wasn't funny enough, a viewer tells Blue to watch a BDO preview for the game. Coincidentally, it's one of the trailers I do show in the part of the video that he skipped. He then proceeds to skip through that trailer as well, and then says,
I don't know, this is just like the graphics trailer, guys. I don't I don't know where we see gameplay in here. I don't know about this.
No, Blue. It's the first official trailer. That's why it's called the first official trailer and not first graphics trailer. And you were literally watching gameplay in the trailer. Maybe if you didn't skip through it, you would see more. You would even see Siege at the end of that video. In fairness of your time, and also because Blue now proceeds to repeat the same points, I'm not going to go chronologically anymore and will just blast through some of the recurring points that he keeps making. First, let's talk about Blue romanticizing open world PvP. This is best seen in the next section where I talk about gear checking, but it is present throughout the entire reaction. Every single time there is a divisive topic in the idea of open world PvP, Blue chooses to only look at the positive and either ignores or in some cases completely disregards the other side and its concerns. I have 3 examples. One is from the previous segment where he talks about a new player getting into PvP. These are his words.
To players that don't have any idea that they want to try PvP until they've seen PvP for the first time and they think to themselves, wait, this actually is approachable. Wait, I could actually do this. It's not as hard as I think. And I think that a lot of players have that experience where they're like, man, I'm just going to be terrible at it. People are going to flame me. It's going to be awful. And then they get into their first AOS match and they do super well. And they're like, or they do like reasonably. And they're like, oh, well, that wasn't so scary. And then they do it again. And then they get more, they like it more, right? Like this is what the MMO does to you.
Now you notice that he never even entertains the idea that the person does poorly, or even worse, that he does poorly and is then flamed for it by his teammates and stop doing PvP. A new player, according to Blue, can only ever do well, or at least reasonably well, and can only ever have a positive and a reinforcing experience in PvP in general. Second section on gear checking. Blue sees the player getting gear checked as a motivational thing. And this is largely because he himself got motivated when he got gear checked. And we'll talk about this later in the video, believe me.
Here's the deal with gear checking. It's a good thing. In open world PvP, gear checking is a good thing. Do you know why? Because it motivates everyone to grind more. Because you know that even if you're not good at PvP, you can just gear check someone and just destroy them. Right? The fact that they're in Black Rose is irrelevant. You could just dumpster that kid because you've been playing the game more. You know what I mean? It motivates me to change servers. Well, I'm talking about people that are like this is just for PvP in general, right? Yeah, and most people are just going to swap servers, sure. But if you die in open world PvP, you're going to swap servers and keep grinding. Why? Because eventually, at some point, someone's going to flag on you and you're going to kill them. And you know what? That's going to feel really good. I know, because I've done that. It feels so good, guys.
While I am sure that some people will get motivated by getting gear checked, there will also be many others who won't. And for most people, getting gear checked is a matter of extent. For example, if you get blown up in League of Legends or Valorant, it may have taken you anywhere between 15 and 45 minutes to lose. As a former League player myself, I can tell you that many people will just say, go next. And this is because the match resets and the next game is a tabula rasa and anything can happen. The difference in BDO is that it will take you hundreds of hours of getting blown up before you get a chance to do it yourself. The only way to not have this happen is to do the equivalent of that one guy who chain loses 17 times in a row on his main in Platinum 2 and then jumps on his Bronze Smurf account to feel better about himself. By this I of course mean that they go to a lower end grind spot and just bully the people below them. Believe it or not, this phenomenon also exists in World of Warcraft, at least in the classic version of it. A person who is bad in PvP gets destroyed in battlegrounds or in whatever endgame zone he finds himself in, and because he needs to heal his ego, he goes to Nessingberry camp in Stanglethorn Vale on his level 60 rogue and camps the NPCs there waiting for the level 30 to 35 Andes to show up and kill them. This is not PvP, this is not competition, this is bullying. For many, I would also say that it's a matter of control. I don't think that anyone gets upset because they get killed on Arsha, and if they do, then I 100% agree that it's on them. But many people want to just chill grind in their favorite spot while they'll watch Netflix or something, and they don't want to be disturbed. If they do get disturbed in this situation, especially if they can't fight back, then it does lead to frustration. What I am saying is that there needs to be a way for players to be able to step out of the constant open world PvP. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing after all. I already know what you're saying, Marni Realm. Well, here's something that Pearl Abyss should absolutely improve on, because Marni Realm has not gotten updates in ages. The latest and highest gear spot with a Marni Realm is Elvia Trolls, but you won't find Marni Realm on any of the Dekia or Ulukita zones, and most importantly, you won't find it in Honglim Base, which is by far the most popular zone for mid-game players in the game thanks to Karazat. We also need to talk about fun, because plain and simple, if a game is not fun, nobody will play it. This is not some real life job where you grind through your burger flipping position and eventually you become the manager or even the CEO. This is, at the end of the day, a piece of entertainment. And if you are not being entertained, why would you continue playing just for that carrot on the stick? We should also talk about open world PvP being inherently toxic, since this is what Blue mentions later on in the video. Make no mistake, toxic griefers that corpse camp you and hunt you down have existed back then too. They just weren't the only open world PvPers at the time, so it was easier for them to blend in and say, "Oh no, I'm not griefing, I'm just doing open world PvP like the rest of you guys." The reason why open world PvP looks more toxic now is because these players have largely stayed the same, but the player base around them has changed, so they stand out more. Sandbox MMOs ultimately are about player freedom, and some players' freedoms will be predicated on taking away the freedom of others. For some players, it will absolutely be personal. Removing the current restrictions will only make this more prevalent. Also, just to be clear, this is not specific to just BDO or BDO today. You don't have to be killed and hunted by one person server to server to become frustrated. All it can take is losing couple of times in a row, even to different people, and deciding that since your time is not being valued by the game, you're going to go somewhere where it is. MMOs already have this problem even without open world PvP. The "it gets good after 100 hours" spiel is already ridiculous enough when you have to sit through a dull story and boring questlines, but it gets all the worse when you are actively being barred from your progression by someone else. What you then end up with, if you allow this bullying to continue for a long time, is a game that is fun for maybe a couple hundred people, but still requires tens of thousands of players to operate. Make no mistake, the reason why MMOs with open world PvP are always the most fun at launch, and why many veterans, including Blue, reminisce about the good old days, is because everyone is closest to each other, not just in terms of gear, but also in terms of knowledge and skill. Yes, you will have some people who may have played the game in beta, but it's not that difficult to learn a couple of classes and grind enough to get the gear needed to compete at the start of a game. As the game gets older, however, this disparity between veterans and newbies gets larger and larger, to the point where a player has next to no chance of competing with the players above them, which means that your game now gets less new players, and if you don't have enough new players to replace the leaving veterans or older players, your game will slowly stagnate and die. You can look at literally any game with open world PvP in it, and you will see exactly the same thing happen there too. This is why I say in the video that games like this rarely die due to developer fuck up, unless you want to say that they fucked up by making an open world PvP game. They put themselves into a corner by attracting a player base that will cannibalize itself, and once the damage is done, they will blame the game for dying. Also, this might be just me, but I find one-sided fights extremely boring, especially when I beat someone who can't fight back. Sure, stomping an enemy into the ground every now and then can be cathartic, but when your fights boil down to you pressing the insta-win button for the majority of your PvP, it becomes really stale really quick. You also don't get any better at the game by having more gear, which can be another driving factor for people playing, which is also why I believe AOS is the most popular PvP content in the game as of today. Blue also sees gear checking as a good thing because it is a way for the old boomer guy to destroy the 18-year-old prodigy in PvP. Now, I don't know how old exactly Blue is, I don't think he's beyond the age of 35. So let's do some other examples. Faker, the best League of Legends player in the entire world, who won the most recent Worlds, is 28. Hungrybox just won the latest Melee tournament at the age of 31. Kerrigan won PGL Major in Counter-Strike at the age of 32. So older people can compete in the highest forms of competitive play, which, let's be real, BDO doesn't even have, and will probably never have. And definitely doesn't affect the vast majority of players, which we can see by games being played by people of all ages. The difference here is that in those games, it's mostly about skill and knowledge. In BDO's open world PvP, it's mostly about time investment. Yes, your skill will improve with time, but the difference here is that in League of Legends, people start at different levels of skill, which means that certain people will get Challenger in the first or second season, and others will be hard stuck silver for 10 years. Whereas in BDO, everyone starts at the same gear score, and therefore everything is decided on how much you play, not on how good you are, and even if you are better than the regular player, it won't give you that much of an advantage over someone who has spent more time in it. This is why many of the open world PvPers want to bring open world PvP back, because they are the ones who invested the most time, and therefore they will be the ones reaping the benefits of such a change. And while you can argue that their time investment should be rewarded, I don't think that it should be rewarded at the cost of everyone else. One last thing I need to address when it comes to gear checking is that his method or way of getting better at PvP is by grinding more. Did it never occur to him that the players above you can grind as much as you do, if not more? And since they are getting more money than you are, you will never catch up, unless you get lucky with enhancing, and they don't. Last example of Blue completely disregarding the other side is towards the end of the video. I will play what he says here.
PvP, but the simple truth of the matter is that those negative interactions that they're having are reinforced actually with the positive interactions that they have. In open world PvP, I can't tell you how positive my interaction was. So some negative villain comes onto my grind zone, starts harassing me or killing me, and then somebody shows up to help me. Positive interaction. Okay, and immediately you have the entire situation turned around, and you feel like you have a friend in the game. Because again, open world PvP encourages that player and player interaction, and guilds coming to help each other is a large part of what forms bonds between men as players, because in mutual suffering, there is bonding.
First of all, hand to heart. When was the last time in BDO that you were PvPing in the open world and some random person showed up to help you? I played this game since 2019 and I have never had this happen to me a single time. Second, Blue's argument here is that if you are getting jumped, you should call your friends. The logical follow-up question here is something that a person in his chat does ask. That being, what if I don't have friends? Let's see how Blue responds.
What if I have no friends? Well, you probably have a girlfriend IRL, so f you.
Oh, he doesn't even address it. Right. Okay, yeah. After this, another person says that they are in a life skiller guild, and his response is to...
My guild's all life skillers, so not going to stop AFK fishing to help me? Well, get into a better guild. You know what I mean?
This is very common throughout his video. When someone in the chat says something that goes against what he just said, his immediate and only response is, that doesn't happen, or that's not true, or some other variation of no. Alright, another glaring issue is that Blue can only see as far as his own nose. Every single time I bring up a point, He starts arguing against it in first person, recounting some of his personal experiences, and then pretends like that's the global truth and is the same for everyone. The easiest way for me to dispute any and all of these statements is by saying it's not like that for me. But I will go further than just that, otherwise it's gonna get misinterpreted. I am sorry, Blue, I'm gonna be blunt. I do not give a single solitary fuck about how you feel or felt when you got killed in Helms. I don't care that you felt motivated to grind more after losing in PvP. I don't give a literal molecule of shit that you cannot comprehend that someone else would have a different reason to play this game other than the reason of your choosing. Because plain and simple, people are different and play the game for whatever reason they desire, and you don't have the right to tell them that they are playing the game wrong, or that they will see the light eventually like you did, and you absolutely do not have the right to tell them to fuck off from the game and play something else, because if that is your attitude towards other people in the community, then I sincerely wish you had fucked off to a different game yourself. Now, do not misinterpret this as me saying that PvPers are not welcome in the game, because this is not what I am saying. People who watch my streams know, and some of them even dislike the fact that I frequently defend the red players that just want to be red, because that is their preferred way of playing, as long as they are not harassing other players. If you want to enjoy the PvP in this game, go for it. PvP as much as you want. What I am saying is that the moment you decide to tell others to fuck off, because they are not doing the same thing that you are, or they are not enjoying the same thing that you are, then you are a person who should not be listened to, and I will show you exactly the same amount of respect as you show these people, which is none. This is my biggest issue with Blue's entire reaction. Every single time it comes to defending why open world PvP should stay in the game, he always uses the defense of it's a sandbox MMORPG, people should be able to do whatever they want. But when then someone says that they don't like the PvP aspects of the game and they like to just PvE or to just grind or do whatever else, then he always says that it's a niche PvP game, and if you don't like it, then you have to go play another game. Go play World of Warcraft, you fucking pussy! To then go and project his way of thinking onto me at the end of the video.
What, so people that disagree with you, the game shouldn't be designed, and the people that disagree with you shouldn't be allowed to play the game? This is essentially what you just said. And to be clear, some people are snowflakes and will quit the game because they got killed one time in the open world. Those are World of Warcraft players. They're complete that are like degenerate loser pussies that are never going to amount to anything in life. Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. This game is not for them. Okay, the game can't appeal to everyone. Like, anyone that disagrees with you, the game just shouldn't be designed for them. Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. Butter Pumpkin, it's a sandbox MMO. What is this, some Democrat logic? Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. What are we talking about? You don't agree with me? You're a fascist? Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. BDO should be for everyone. Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. I want to emphasize that when I put this up as a react on my channel, if you disagree with me, you should play BDO too. Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. You should have fun with the game too. Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. And the developers should design the game in your best interest. Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares. But also my best interest and PvPers' best interest. Because there should be something in the game for everyone, because it's a sandbox MMO. Let them go back to World of Warcraft. Nobody cares.
Is frankly dishonest, deplorable, and absolutely scummy. Oh yeah, let's actually play that clip from the video, by the way. I already know that people will tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I should quit the game, or that it's not made for me, which is only going to serve my point and really prove that we should probably not be listening to people who can only see as far as their noses and refuse to help anyone but themselves. Yeah, sorry Blue, that I don't think that we should listen to people who can only ever insult the people who don't agree with them, who call me a life skiller just to discredit me and for no other reason, who repeatedly throughout the video say that I don't know what I'm talking about, who call people that agree with the video or me idiots, and who tell people like me or anyone else who doesn't agree with you to go play World of Warcraft. Oh yeah, that's literally what you've been doing the last 3 hours of the reaction. The lack of introspection on your side is absolutely staggering. For the record, Blue, you can disagree with me as much as you want. Once again, the video was made to spark discussion, and I had people in the comments before you reacted to me disagreeing with me while still being amicable. This was not the case with you or the people who came from your reaction as a result. This is no longer a disagreement or a discussion, this is a shouting match, and all you are doing is making the divide between the PvPers and everyone else just that much larger by turning the entire video into an us versus them. Alright, let's move to some extremely egregious stuff. Blue completely misinterpreted my section on the monetization of BDO to the point where he flipped my argument completely upside down. What I said in the video was that there are people who don't want pay to win or really any microtransaction in the game and want it to operate on a subscription only model. I then showed that this is not only impossible in practice, judging from the 3 largest MMOs having microtransactions on top of a mandatory subscription, but it's also impossible in theory by taking the amount of money Pearl Abyss needs to raise in order to stay afloat every year and then using that with the standard subscription price, which is $15 a month. Of at least 1.3 million active subscribers a year.
Wait, what? You mean he meant dollars? He meant dollars.
Blue, when I said 1.3 million active subscribers, I did not mean $1.3 million in that graphic. I meant 1.3 million active subscribers, as in people. That's what the words active subscribers mean. But since you need this spelled out more, here we go. You need $240 million. One person gives you $180. How many people who all give you $180 each will you need before you have $240 million? That's right! 1.3 million people! Congratulations! Yay! You did it! Yippee! And for those of you who still didn't get it, I am arguing against a mandatory subscription, not in favor of it. Also, Blue blames Lascaris for pay to win being added to the game, and yeah, this shit made me completely speechless.
Okay, of course PvPers are not going to want pay to win in the game. Do you know who the big pay to win advocates are? Do you know who the players that really love pay to win and they don't give a the life skillers that are basically mobile game players, the players that want to spend 10 extra dollars so that they can have a way more convenient time processing, right? With the outfit. The players that want to spend $20 on a cooking outfit so that they can cook 2 seconds faster than they were before on every make, right? Is that pay to win? Absolutely. And it was strongly encouraged by the life skilling community, all right? Those are the players that really love pay to win in the game. And the players that Pearl Abyss is coddling to when they talk about pay to win.
Let's make one thing clear. The reason why PvPers complain about pay to win so much is because it affects them the most directly. Not because of some higher cause or because they are fighting the good fight against corporate greed. If someone else kills you because they bought a fucking Excalibur in the store, you will feel that much more than if a last killer has 100 more fishing mastery than you do. You need to understand one thing. The reason why Perlebiz added the ghillie suit as well as all the other pay-to-win mechanics that they have added throughout the years is because PvPers were buying them. It really is just that simple. These anti-pay-to-win boycotts are nothing but performative outrage because they never work, and we have seen that they do not work because guess what? They never removed the ghillie suit or any of the pay-to-win mechanics from the game. And in fact, they added more ways for you to pay to win in your PvP. The moment one PvPer buys that pay to win item, you know that every single person he kills with that pay to win ghillie suit or whatever else is going to go and buy the same thing to even the odds. You cannot blame lifeskillers for Cronstones either, because they were literally not usable on lifeskill gear until last year. And then there is the simple fact that the pay to win for lifeskills actually has a fairly low ceiling of how much money a single person can spend. Like, you're gonna buy your canopy, your maid outfit, maybe some other costumes, the tent which you need for other things anyway, fences, the hedgehogs, mates, and maybe some storage which again you will use in other places anyway, weight and inventory space. All of this combined will cost you a fraction of the money that a PvPer will spend on enhancing their Pen Black Star. I am quite literally going against my own argument that I made in the original video just because what you said was such a terrible take. Next up, we have a spicy one. Is the community as a whole to blame for the death of PvP? Not at all. Are specific people or groups of people in the community to blame? Yes, absolutely. Blue even agrees with me here that the reason we lost one-sided decks and the Black Drop guy was because of a group of people harassing streamers, which already proves my point, but let's take it a bit further. My man went into a tantrum because I didn't mention that crystals don't swap fast enough because the other player leaves before you can do it.
As a newish player, my main problem that pushed me away from Arsha is because the PvE crystal grind. I can't swap PvP crystals fast enough when someone ganks me. That is a super valid concern, Darylite. That is a super valid concern, and that is a very legitimate complaint that I agree with you on. 100%. That is one of the biggest problems for open world PvP. He hasn't talked about it in this video at all, but yeah, having to switch specs is a big deal, especially when you don't know if that person's going to stick around. Sometimes they come gank you on Arsha or whatever, they kill you, and then you're like, dude, should I swap servers or should I swap setups and fight this guy? Or is he just going to leave? Because you end up like swapping everything, getting the, popping new consumables and all this crazy shit, and then the dude just leaves. Like, oh my god.
It quite literally takes 3 seconds outside of a safe zone. Now, I could make fun of 3 seconds being too long for Blue and leave it at that. But let's look at what he said again. According to him, it's the game's fault that the other person leaves before you can fight back. How you can make that connection is simply beyond me. Also guys, have you noticed that in the entire video, every single time there's someone in chat who says something that Blue personally agrees with, he makes that point into a legit thing, you know, it's legit, it's valid, it should be fixed, and when it's something that he doesn't personally agree with, then that's not true, it's cooked, you're not correct, you are just rage baiting, and etc, etc, etc. It's so fucking disingenuous to pretend like only the problems that you personally see are the real ones. Like, please, Blue, for the future, stop this fucking disgusting behavior. One more misinterpretation. In the section where I talk about Cho Nation, I am not blaming the community or even Cho themselves. I state this specifically in my pinned comment, where I know that if it wasn't Chow Nation, it would be someone else. Again, this is the core issue of PvP being inherently cannibalistic. It is much easier to see this in Node Wars, yes, but it does happen in overall PvP too. Of course, you can blame Perlebis here, I will agree. I personally do believe that the Node War system was mismanaged. I did not talk about them and I won't talk about them here either because the topic was and still is open world PvP, not Node Wars and Siege. Blue thinks that they are linked and wants me to talk about them more, but they really aren't, and Blue says this himself when he says this.
Flagged all the time, Arsha or not, it did not matter. You were flagged, and if a white dot came onto the minimap, you were sweating, okay, because they were challenging you for that grind zone. That's just how it was, and it was nothing personal. They weren't going to follow you to the next server if they beat you. They just want the grind zone because they need to grind, right? And so you'd be like, damn, and then you'd swap servers and you try to do the same thing to somebody else. It wasn't personal. It was just good business.
As you just heard, overall PvP is not personal. Everyone was just flagged all the time. And if it is not personal, then you don't need beef, and you don't even need guilds to provide you that beef, right? You could remove guilds from overall PvP entirely, and it would still be the same if it weren't personal. It can only be one or the other. You cannot have your cake and eat it too. In saying all that, we also need to consider that BDO is neither the first nor the last MMORPG to have had Node Wars and or open world PvP. The vast majority of those games failed too. To name a few, Lineage 2, Arcade 2, My Beloved 4 Story, Blade and Soul, New World, Sword of Legends Online, and Mortal Online 2 are just some of the many examples. Even in games that used to have a large PvP scene, such as World of Warcraft, Guild Wars 2 or RuneScape, this aspect of the game has faded over time. This cannot be accidental. You can think that every company fucked up and no company will ever make a good PvP game, but I believe that there is a larger and honestly simpler reason behind all of this. The reason why many of the open world PvP games, and just PvP games in general, fail, and the ones that manage to not fail do so by moving away from PvP, is that the market has changed. And it has changed in three connected ways. First, it's less hardcore than it used to be. Ever since at least Classic WoW in 2004, MMOs tried to attract more of a casual audience. WoW itself was made as a more casual-friendly MMO compared to EverQuest, and it has only ever gotten more casual since. This is for the second reason. The audience that plays MMOs is much older now. Many of the kids who grew up on WoW because their relatives played it are now parents themselves. They don't have as much time to dedicate to grinding mobs or running dungeons. At the same time, the younger generation is generally not interested in MMOs. The idea of a living, breathing world is just not as novel as it used to be back then, and the mechanics of these games are archaic by today's standards. The MMOs themselves are not helping this fact by always trying to attract the nostalgia crowd by being some sort of a clone of World of Warcraft, EverQuest, RuneScape or Lineage. The entire scene then ends up being extremely derivative and stagnates as a whole because instead of playing new MMOs bringing new crowds and new demographics of players, these new games poach from established games, which only sets them up for failure because the moment those derivations make a mistake, the people will just go back to their original game of choice and leave the other in the dust entirely. The third reason is probably the most damaging to PvP in MMOs specifically. It's League of Legends, or more broadly, the MOBA genre. Yes, I understand that MOBAs rose up from the RTS genre because of Defense of the Ancients being a Warcraft 3 mod, which I played myself, but I think that it is undeniable that the MOBAs had a lot of audience crossover with MMOs. What MOBAs did is that they removed all the grind surrounding the PvP and gave you the thing you as a PvPer wanted the most. No more grinding for hours to get that one item which makes you slightly better against a single class. No more requirements of joining groups for raids or dungeons and being tied to other people in order to progress. And I would say most importantly, no more of that one overgeared bastard mage who just keeps corpse camping me at the spirit healer in fucking Ungora crater while I'm trying to mine thorium for my Arcanite Reaper. What then happened is that the majority of the people who were interested in PvP would go to these MOBAs. Yet another group that wanted the organic and unpredictable fights would later leave for the survival genre with games like Rust, and yet another group would then leave for the extraction shooters like Tarkov. Because MMOs now lost a huge part of its PvP audience, it was much harder for them to create revenue, which was made even more difficult when these players were spread throughout multiple titles. So the natural evolution of MMOs was to appeal to the long-term progression RPG enjoyers and raiders. The PvE aspect of MMOs doesn't really have a true competitor, since single-player RPGs have a limit of how far your character can progress. Online RPGs and gachas lack the group aspect as well, and if you want just a pure number go up game, you're gonna be playing something like a cookie clicker, which has nothing to do with MMOs. So yes, if you want to say that PvP as a whole is dying is the fault of the game, I think it's much more accurate to say that it's the fault of the entire genre and the respective market. With that said, I think that it's even more important to then go and try to foster the community as a form of self-preservation if nothing else, instead of doing this us versus them thing where everyone who doesn't agree with you or doesn't like a certain aspect of the game should go play other games. Just so we are clear, I am not speaking just about PvPers here. Remember, I used to play FF14, and to this day I still remember an officer of an FC that I was in going into my DMs and saying that he will find my address and come beat me up and burn my house down, and that I should go back to World of Warcraft or whatever other game I came from because all I do is spread toxicity and negativity in the guild, all because I said that I skip cutscenes in guild chat. The reason I don't generally focus on the faults of the game and general doom posting about how everything is shit and how PAs is to blame for everything is the simple reason that it creates a sense of powerlessness. That there is nothing you can do and anything you do end up doing is in vain. This is why I had the segment in the video where I urged you to go and PvP if you want to do more PvP. It wasn't to say that the game is perfect or that you owe the game the attention. It was to say that if you truly want something, it's never too late to start. At the very least, you will have given it a shot. Blue of course misinterpreted this as me telling him to go and save the game, but this is not in no way the case. I am simply saying that if you want true change in your life or in the things that you enjoy, you need to look inwards and do the changes that you personally can do. Before we move on, let's also talk about the idea of banning people. Blue naively believes that banning people would magically solve all of BDO's issues, but this is simply not the case. Let's unwrap it one by one. First, banning doesn't prevent the harassment or toxicity from happening, it only reprimands the person after they have done it, so the damage is already done, and at that point all you are preventing is further damages. Second, banning is personal, so it will only affect a certain person who has been reported, which means that unreported harassment or toxicity will go unpunished entirely. Third, if your ban system is too strict, it can lead to the exact opposite problem where people are mass reported and banned as a result of false reports. Fourth, there are way too many variables and a ban rule would be way too vague. Like how many times would you need to be killed or harassed by a single person for it to be bannable? What if that person tells their friends to do the same and now it's not bannable because it's not one guy and you can't prove that they are together? What if you consider it to be too much and the other guy thinks it's actually not enough? A vague system is a bad system, and a one-size-fits-all solution like the one-sided dex removal might be blunt and it will hurt people who are not abusing the systems, but it is also extremely effective. Fifth, what stops a banned person from doing it again or just ban evading? If you get banned, you can just get a new account and do it all again. Sure, you might not be able to do the exact same of harassment, but if you want to be annoying, you still can. Sixth, banning doesn't actually make toxicity go away. League of Legends bans people all the time. Do you think that the game is any less toxic thanks to it? And finally, seventh, a ban system is very expensive for the company because someone needs to be there and look through these tickets at all times. Unless you want to automate, which creates further problems with that automation and people abusing that automated system. The problem with bans is not necessarily that the CM team is lazy, but more so due to the lack of manpower, as CM's job description isn't just look through report tickets and ban people after all. In the next session, let's wrap up all the other statements Blue has made during his reaction that he either later contradicts or make no sense whatsoever from the get-go. I have already talked about many of these, but the others include.
Sodacolas, yet most new players that join BDO aren't looking to be rolled to have motivation to grind. Most new players just want to grind their infinite progression PvE game. That's not true. I think that most new players, and to be clear, you don't really see Divios going to Blood Wolves to farm some new player. Or Choice. How often do you see Choice grinding into Shira Ruins? Just doesn't happen. Most of the time, new players are going to be fighting other new players or returning players who are roughly close to their gear score level. Okay, CPCP does. CPCP is about equality. He kills everyone equally on Arsha. Okay, if you don't want to be killed by him, don't be on Arsha.
Veteran players don't kill newbies, Choice and Divios don't do it. Well, CP does, but he does it because he killed everyone. Here we are using two people as the representative of an entire group, which is called snake to kick fallacy, by the way, new word. And this is a dishonest tactic because the statement wasn't Choice and Divios kill newbies, it was veteran players kill newbies. And as we all know, Choice and Divios are not the only veteran players in BDO, and at the same time, it's been proven that some veteran players do kill newbies, such as CPCP, and Blue had to come up with a different excuse for them. So let's analyze that other half of his argument as well. New players kill other new players or other returning players around their gear score, but if you as a new player are on Arsha, and you get killed by a veteran player, it's your fault and you should not be on Arsha. To which my honest question is, where the fuck are those new players supposed to be if they want to fight other new players? And once again, all it does is prove the fact that veteran players do in fact kill newbies. Also, here's another statement from Blue from the same video.
The elitist endgame players. The elitist endgame players, just like they yeah, sure, they want to just shit on everyone, but that's because they've played it longer than you. It is what it is.
So even in his own words, he still agrees that endgame players do kill newbies. Okay, this is my personal favorite. I'm just gonna let it go.
And that's the problem with open world PvP right now that I don't think he's ever going to address because I think he's really far off base. He's talking about something that he doesn't understand. What makes open world PvP good and fun is a competition for resources. Plain and simple. Back in the day, the reason that we had competition for resources was a small amount of servers and a smaller amount of grind zones. So like back then, you used to fight somebody and like, would they one-shot you? Damn, what was the response? The same thing it is today. We would swap servers and then we would try to fight someone else. And if they one-shot you too, you'd have to swap servers again. But here's the deal. Eventually, you're like, I just have to go to a worse grind zone. Until you find a grind zone where you find people that are around your gear level, so you can find a grind zone that you can lock down for a reasonable enough period of time that you can actually make money.
What Blue says I don't understand and I'm not going to be talking about is exactly what I'm going to be talking about in the video. He talks about the totem pole effect and fighting over resources, both of which I do talk about in the video, which, by his own words, must mean that I am not far off base, and that I do understand what I'm talking about, and I do understand open world PvP. So thank you for the validation, Blue. Another Goldie.
Decrease the amount of servers. I know. I'm the bad. I'm a mean person. I'm the bad guy. But the only way you're gonna get a competition for resources is if you decrease the amount of servers that PvP is actually able to happen on. It's just the truth. Okay. So like, whether you make certain servers designated for PvP, like, hey guys, now there are 5 servers designated for Arsha PvP, but they're, you know, like 300% drop rate all the time.
You heard it here first, guys. The only way to increase open world PvP is by making more Arsha servers. Fun fact, Arsha today, without pay to win, is almost 300% drop rate. It's 277.5 without the Land of the Morning Light buff. And today we can't fill 2 Arsha servers. This one is a double whammy too, because once again, remember, Blue himself said that open world PvP is the end game because it gives no rewards. And it serves as the catch-up mechanics, because people are having fun fighting each other and not grinding. So by doing this, that would actually make open world PvP not an endgame activity. I have one more, but there's literally nothing that I can add because this really speaks for itself. One for PvE and the other for PvP.
That's not true anymore. You just wear the same thing. Is this guy even PvP? What are you talking about? Nowadays, the only thing that's different is your crystal setup. You just change your crystals real quick. Boom. Right? You don't bring accuracy accessories to your grind zone anymore with you. You just change your Karazad crystals.
Okay, so that was a fun intermission with a lot of nonsense. Now let's continue with some more serious topics.
It's time for Jay to step aside. Was I wrong? And did we not get what we wanted?
Alright, I'm going to ignore the shit-eating green and the finger-tempting that he does like a fucking anime villain. There is more to unpack here. Because first and foremost, yes, you were wrong. You were as wrong as you could have possibly been. A viewer of yours even pointed this out to you.
Really does
work,
like PvP.
But the moment Wansu spoke sweet nothings to us, everyone opened their wallets back up. Now the game is downhill again, skeptical smiley face.
And that could be you could be correct, right? But if it goes back to downhill again, do you think people are going to keep opening their wallets?
All the 2 new guys did was whisper sweet nothings into your ear. But let's take it even further. Let's go through the content talked about in Calphion Ball that talks about PvP. Hardcore server, announced by Jae-hee Kim at Heidelberg 2024. Demon Lands, announced by Jae-hee Kim at Heidelberg 2024, where he already said that it will have a completely new type of content, which means that they were already working on it before the 2 new guys talked about it in Calphion Ball. Dragon Mount for PvP, announced by Jae-hee Kim at Calphion Ball 2023. The guild tier and tagging system, where you can choose if your guild is PvP, PvE or life skill focused, announced at Heidelberg 2024, and scrapped by these 2 guys in Calphion Ball 2024. Alright, so what did you actually get if we remove these things announced by Jay? You got RBF increased rewards and matchmaking, both things proposed by Choice, and clearly added last minute, since they had actually nothing to say besides that. Maybe, potentially, possibly removing resistances from PvP, and maybe changing the class ratios, which they have themselves said that they are just considering, so we don't even know if that's gonna happen. And before you say that it's on PvE, remember when they asked us if we want every class to have a grab on PvE? Or replace super armors with frontal guards and so on? Yeah, nothing happened with that, did it? AOS replay, a balanced update to Node Wars, which happens basically every single year by the way. 2 more teams for Guild League, and yeah, that's about it. 10 minutes of talking, I forgot to say. Now, for comparison, life skills got an increased mastery cap, new accessories, new tools, more fish species, a fishing tournament, sailing auto-fishing, new sailing UI, new sailor functions, sea crystal consolidation, Eben Roof null improvements, faster horse EXP, ability to catch 4 horses at once using a wagon, better stats, and a new horse UI. Except for the 3k mastery, none of this got announced previously or was even talked about by Choice. So yeah, you were wrong, because again, replacing a mouthpiece does absolutely fuck all for a game. It's like thinking that getting a new livery will make your beat up Vespa into a BMW. It's not like Jay has left the company, He just doesn't want his face plastered on every YouTube Doom post where he googles the game. Again, the major content was already being worked on when Jay announced it. So you are left with a series of small patch notes, and there is a reason why those two poor fellas spent 10 minutes yapping about the good old days and then mentioned two things they were quite literally just considering because they were playing for time. But I bet that you would have hated it with Jay saying all of that, which only proves how gullible you are. Oh yeah, and while we are at that video, in said video you stated this.
Okay. And I'm going to raise you one further. Okay. If you still have this delusion that like you're going to get your PvP back, I'm going to raise you one further. Okay. China. Okay. China does not allow open world PvP. I'm just gonna say it. They do not allow players to be flagged on in the open world. Black Desert cannot publish their game in China if there is open world PvP in the game. And they are trying to put they're trying to publish Black Desert in China because there's money. Money, please. Okay, so it's only going to get worse. Open world PvP is going to be removed from the game. All right.
So to summarize, you state that open world PvP in BDO is getting removed because BDO is getting a Chinese release. Now, I don't need to tell you that open world PvP did not get removed in October when BDO did get a Chinese release. And I don't need to tell you that the one-sided Guild-X got removed for unrelated reasons to the Chinese release. What I do need to tell you is that this specific thing was never going to happen because this thing that you are saying is true is actually very far from it. As far as I know, the rumor that Chinese games are removing open world PvP got started by Fake Uni in the video community, who specifically called it a speculation and got his sources in an EVE Online forum, somebody linked it to him, who got it from a Chinese article in 2023. What you did, Blue, is you made those speculations into a done deal and just said that China does not allow open world PvP, which again, this is not true. First, the article itself talks about other things besides open world PvP, such as daily login rewards, pop-ups, etc. Second, it would be in effect only within China, which means that it would not affect BDO for us outside of China. Third, BDO was in talks and wanted to get into the Chinese market for 11 years, which means that it literally predates the release of the game itself. Fourth, there are also other restrictions for all media in China, regardless of this regulation, that every game has to follow if they want to be in a Chinese market. Most importantly, anything that has to do with death. So, if PvP got removed, it would be accompanied with any mentions of death or the undead. So say goodbye to Hex Marie, say goodbye to City of the Dead, say goodbye to Barry Boss Blitz, say goodbye to Blood Splatters, and say goodbye to all corpses. No more corpses. Not in the game world, not the mobs that you kill, not the players that you kill. No more corpses. Most importantly, if you actually follow the source all the way, you will find out that this was, at the time, a draft. It never passed into law, which means that China does absolutely allow open world PvP, and we can see that not only with hindsight today, because guess what, open world PvP does exist in BDO, but we knew it even at the time, because guess what, Throne and Liberty released in China before all of these fucking speculations happened in the first place. So yes, Blue, you were very wrong. You were wrong on every single conceivable level that you could have possibly been wrong on. Also, the game was not going uphill following Calphion Ball because of PvPers. It was going up because of new players. Because guess what? The game was free to keep on Steam. And even if that was not the case, BDO always has a spike around the ball because people come back for all the free rewards. Stop with these fucking PvP fables, okay? You are just spreading disinformation and nothing else. Okay, I have saved the final contradiction for last, because this one is the biggest one. Let's talk about the ideal form of open world PvP according to Blue. Listen up.
And an ideal open world PvP situation, if he kills someone on a grind zone, he's not going to go to the next grind zone looking for another person. He's not going to wonder if he comes back. He's going to start grinding. He's going to start grinding immediately because he needs to start grinding right now because he needs to get as much money as he can before the next comes in and starts PvPing him, because the next guy is going to come in and try and take his server, because that is competition for resources. Everyone's fighting. You're just trying to hold down a grind zone for long enough to grind for that period of the day, right? Like, it wasn't personal. I'm not following you server to server, and I certainly don't have to go looking for PvP anywhere. No, if a white dot comes onto the rotation, there's no duel for spot. There's no hey, how long are you going to be? It's they're already flagged up and we have engaged in combat. Like, that's how it is, right? And if you lose, you lose. Now we're just going to swap and go again, right? We're saying that PvP should be a natural aspect of the game that you encounter in a reasonably healthy manner. Okay, that means sometimes you're going to die and other times you're going to win, and it's going to feel good. All right, and you'll grind harder to try to make wins happen more frequently. Losing is not necessarily suffering. Okay, losing just means that you're going to work hard to try to win next time.
All right. So according to what we just heard, the ideal form of open world PvP is when you avoid PvP and you go grind. The way to improve at open world PvP is by grinding more. You heard it here first, guys. The ideal form of open world PvP is PvE. I'm sorry, Blue. I thought the idea was to improve open world PvP and make everyone PvP more, not make everyone grind their ass off running in circles. Let's be real for a second here, okay? The reason why open world PvP is in the state that it is in today is precisely because people are too busy grinding and they see PvP as nothing more than just a waste of time at best and outright griefing at worst. We could implement every single change you want, and I guarantee you that open world PvP would be just as dead as it is today, because people would be grinding in their own little pockets in the world without any interaction between each other. And if you want to force that interaction on them while they are grinding anyway, they will not stick around because they have hundreds of other games to play. Make no mistake, you are living in a fantasy land with nostalgia glasses stapled to your face. This game is no longer the same game you so vividly remember from 2017 or whenever else in the past, and the majority of the player base today is not the same player base as it was back in the day either. So let's stop with these archaic changes that can only ever be detrimental to the game today as a whole, and actually look at what could be done to improve the player versus player content in this game. And just so we are perfectly clear, not only does Perlabase agree with me on this topic of the grind being too much, they quite literally said the same thing on Calphion Ball 2024 during this PvP speech that you love so much. You agree with me on this as well, you just don't realize that you do. Remember when you said that the endgame is where the fun PvP activities are? The thing you do when you are hardcap, when you have full deck everything and so on? Yeah? Do you know how people get to endgame faster? That's right, if they have to grind less. Before we go, one last thing for all of you still watching. When in a discussion or a debate, you need to look at who the person behind the argument is. Not in order to discredit them like Blue does, but in order to know where their arguments are coming from. Blue wants gear checking in the game, he wants non-consensual PvP, and he wants to be rewarded more for open world PvP because he himself benefits from these changes the most. He said this himself in the video.
I want to dominate. Of course. Yeah, I want to flex the fact that I've been playing the game for way longer than you. I have more gear than you, and or I'm better at the game than you. One way or another, you're flexing.
People like Blue are not arguing for a better game, they are arguing for a game where they themselves have more fun at the cost of everyone else's fun. The reason why the game is bad now, according to Blue, is because it simply doesn't appeal to him anymore. And while I can sympathize with him to an extent, I will never condone this type of behavior from people like him. One final message, just for Blue, if he does react to this video, and it is to take his own advice. So here you go.
You've completely missed the point of what I was trying to tell you. You're so caught up, like, you're so caught up in your own head on this, bro. You've got to, like, you got to see it from everyone's perspective. Okay, you gotta breathe, take a breath, deep breath.
That's all I have for you today, handsome. Remember to like and subscribe, and enjoy your grind. Or should I say, enjoy your open world PvP.